Let's talk about something special, baby. That's Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward.
Wasn't sure we were going.
I know. I love to get you ready for some Snap Judgments brought to you by Buyers Auto, like keeping you on your toes. And that's how we all were when we were talking to surprise guest on Woody Wednesday, Parker Fleming. So we have a lot to talk about with injury updates. We're going to get to some of that. Of course, we're going to get to offensive line talk because Matthew Jones was available on Wednesday night. But we got thrown a little bit of a curveball because Parker Fleming came out, and this part doesn't surprise me, and I will say it right up front. He is accountable. He is still a wonderful man. He sat there and answered questions that were difficult, and he did that for 10 minutes and tried to offer the best explanations that he could. All of those are A pluses. Were there a lot of solutions in there? I would have to say probably not.
Yeah, so I wasn't there for his whole thing, so I would yield to you, I think, on most of this conversation. I was there when he was asked specifically about the fake punt that wasn't a fake punt, I guess, against Rutgers, and he did not want to go into detail on exactly what the breakdown was there because he said we still have games to play, and I guess there was something in there that if an opponent heard it, they could take advantage of.
Which opponent?
Any opponent, especially one that is prone to taking a look at things in advance. So like I guess I get that. My assumption is that what happened there is not a state secret, and they probably could talk about it, but he chose not to. And otherwise, I guess I'll leave it to you what else he said.
Yeah, so there were a number of questions where, and again, points to Ohio State, points to the people in the Woody, points to Parker Fleming for doing this, and maybe there is a limit to the amount of answers that you can reveal publicly, but there were some questions about, well, we had this conversation a year ago after the game. There was another breakdown in the Peach Bowl, the Rutgers play, all these things, the way it's described by Ryan Day has been miscommunication. So if the trend is these continue to happen, who's responsible for communication? And he said, well, that's the special teams coordinator. He's the one that's doing that. And then that leads to the next question. All right, well, so how does this continue to happen? Like, that is your ultimate responsibility. And I think, he would say, those are good questions. Those are fair questions. And I think that's it wasn't meant to be evasive, but I don't know that he has a great way to answer it. He said that he thinks by and large, there are more positive plays than not. The bad ones you can't have. And I think that's when we're talking about special teams being an issue for Ohio State, the bad ones are ones that can cost you a game. That hasn't happened to Ohio State. But he acknowledged that, that you can cover kickoffs really well. You can have Jermaine Matthews flying around on punt return. You can have Lorenzo Styles drawing penalties and setting, Indiana off inside the 10-yard line in the opener. And there were a number of plays that he could point to, but it was the bad ones that we're talking about because they happen so frequently. And it's the bad ones that he's trying to eliminate because in a week and a half or whatever happens after that, those become even more important and potentially costly.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably right that there are more good plays than bad plays, but there's like one bad play a game, and that's far too many.
Minimum.
When it comes, minimum when it comes to special teams. I guess they didn't have one, did they? Is Pat, am I forgetting?
Fake punt
against Michigan State. Oh, Michigan State's fake punt. Yeah, when they had like the defense on the field, but then still seemed unready for the punt. Yeah, I don't know. Thank you for reminding me of that. So like,
sorry for reminding me of that.
Yeah, there's too many to bank. I don't know. Like I do give any head coach or any coach who comes out to like face questions about job performance credit for doing so because they are not obligated.
Yep.
It sounds like there wasn't much in the way of like satisfactory is not the right word, but like answers that get us anywhere. Like merely acknowledging that it is a good question and not having much of a response for it, I don't find particularly useful. And it does feel like a little bit of a dismissal of the severity of the issue, which I think is pretty important and something that can hold them back when they get into a bigger game and something that I'm borderline waiting to cost them a game because that's how bad I think it's been this year. So I don't know, maybe this is helpful in helping eliminate those mistakes and it gets them to sharpen that a little bit. So I don't have anything else to say other than I guess we'll see what happens from here.
Yeah, and that was pretty much the way it summed up. Doug asked him at the end, like, the sentiment that you just shared. It's like he said that to Parker Fleming. It's like this shoe could drop in a big game. Like, what would be your response to that? And he said, I'm going to take that back to the meeting room and think about it. Because, like, I don't know. It felt like Doug was breaking news to him that that this was going to be pretty important.
That it's potentially hazardous.
Yeah, like, oh gosh. And then Park, like, this could be costly. Oh, wait, that did swing the momentum in that rivalry game last year, or it could have made a different outcome in the Peach Bowl. Like, I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit, but when you hear that sort of response, and you know, I don't know, are they going to get it fixed? They don't have that much time to do so.
They don't. No, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I think you're just at the point where you hope it doesn't cost them. I think is probably the rosiest outlook you can have on the situation.
All right, so that's if you were coming here on a Wednesday night looking for nothing but special teams conversation, sorry, it's over. Let's get into some of what we saw as Ohio State left the practice field on Wednesday evening. Did not see Mike Hall. I will say up front, you know, the update from Ryan Day on Tuesday did not sound all that positive. I was told later on Tuesday and again today that Ohio State isn't at the point of concern, that they don't think Mike Hall could be available in a week and a half's time. I don't know what that means for Saturday, but I didn't see him coming off the practice field. So we can start with that. I was looking for Josh Proctor and that safety situation as Ohio State's managing injuries. I didn't see him tonight. I expected him to be back on Saturday, and I would say that I probably still do. But in terms of coming off the field, didn't see him. Didn't see Lathan Ransom and the other guys who are dealing with injuries that are season-ending, Mayan Williams, Court Williams, guys like that. But Ryan Day's response in his lightning round feels like they're going to be pretty much at full capacity for the last 2 weeks of the regular season. I still think that they might be a little bit cautious with guys like Tommy Eichenberg, who's got a bionic arm now, it appears, with how big the brace is on that left arm. But you know, if the game was on Saturday, I think that they'd play, and I think they'd have the full complement of non-season ending guys.
Yeah, it seems that way. And like Tommy had his pads on, like he looked like he was at least a part-time participant in practice. We didn't get to watch practice, obviously, but the fact that he was dressed, I think, is encouraging. I think you're exactly right. If they were playing Michigan this week, he would play, and they're not. So maybe he'll dress and go through warm-ups and not play, or play a shortened workload if they can afford it in that game, and if the game gets out of hand. But I was like simultaneously surprised to hear Ryan Day say that he thinks they're going to be at mostly full capacity. And then I like stopped to think about it. I was like, no, I guess you're right. Like, aside from Lathan Ransom and Mayan Williams season-ending injuries to guys that would otherwise be contributors to this team, they do seem to be in pretty good shape, aside from bumps and bruises that happened at this time of the year, right? Now,
pretty much everybody seemed to have like extra tape on their wrists or their thumbs, or Kyle McCord still wearing very heavy ankle tape and ankle braces on Devin Brown, who was actually running a little bit more after practice tonight, and it looked considerably better than he did on Saturday. So like, that's the way it goes this time of year, and that's another reason why if Ohio State can give itself a little breathing room on Saturday, like, you got to take advantage of that to be as healthy as possible for what's looming after that. And I know that that's not the way that coaches want to think. That's not the way you prepare to go into a Saturday. By the way, they're playing Minnesota. That's not on the board this week to beat another M, as Ohio State continues to keep its focus solely on the Block O. But they did embrace that very quickly once they got into the game on Saturday and pulled them at halftime. And I know that there's a delicate balance. You want to be, you know, sharp and work out all the whatever kinks that might still be out there. But I would say probably being healthy is more important than anything else when you're pointing towards Michigan.
For sure. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that could lead to a clunkier game against Minnesota if you're not, I don't know, not going full throttle is not what I mean to say, but if you are being a little cautious in that way, or like not playing guys as much, or maybe in the case of like a Emeka Egbuka not throwing 12 balls his way to try to get them to knock off the rust because you want to make sure you have them for the following week against Michigan. So we'll see, but I think this game will go in a way that Ohio State is able to comfortably rest its key guys in the second half.
How will it go on the offensive line?
It's a great question. I don't know. So we talked with Matthew Jones tonight, and he said he's been practicing some at center this week, but he was probably asked 5 or 6 questions about playing center, and at no point did he seem to think that it was weird that he played center against Michigan State. And he did remind us, so like, I was wrong about this. he has played in a game before. In 2021, he played 25 snaps, also against Michigan State at center. So this was not the first time that he's played center in a game in his career at Ohio State. But
they just see something on film that they love against Michigan State.
Yeah, that's what it is. So he's done it this week, but like I talked to him a little bit on the side afterward, and I said, like, we're all just like interested in the idea that you played in the game. But then he was like, yeah, like it wasn't not a predetermined thing. They just said, like, in the middle of the game, do you want to go play center? And in terms of like the practice workload, he said nothing is out of the ordinary. He does a little bit of center work every week, kind of just in case, like not only snapping, but he said he'll do a few periods where he lines up at center and plays that way on the offensive line. So he gave no indication that he's doing that more now than he ever has in the past, but it remains interesting to me about what could happen there.
It sounded like what I was told coming out of practice the last 2 days, that routine had been changed a little bit and that the workload was a little bit heavier. I don't think it's Matthew Jones' place to come out and say, hey, I might be taking this, this young kid's job and we're going to make a change late in the year. That's a Ryan Day or Justin Fry situation. I understand that. So it's not a Matthew Jones, just like Parker Fleming. Sometimes they're in a position, well, it's a little different. Matthew Jones is put in a position where he shouldn't be taking accountability for decisions like that. So that is different than a coach. I'll correct myself on that. But it's also a tough one for him to be in, because if some of that has changed, he doesn't want to see that. He started 10 games next to Carson Hinsman all year. They've developed a good relationship. They're in meetings all the time. Like, that's not something that you want to go out and say about a teammate. Like, yeah, we're really concerned. And that's why I was put in the game in the third quarter and why Enoch Vamahi came out there. Like, I certainly understand all that. I do think that the door is more open for change, maybe even more today than I felt yesterday.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And well, I don't know that they're going to start Matt Jones at center against Minnesota, but maybe they'll go to that look quicker, again, just to continue to develop it in case they feel like they need to go to it full time, maybe against Michigan. Matt Jones was also asked about Carson Hinsman, and not are you going to take his job, but like what have you thought of the way that he's played this year? And he had some really nice words about Carson and how he's grown as a communicator, and like he's a young guy working through some stuff and trying to get better every day. So it's not like, would they come out here and say like they don't have trust in him if that were the case? I don't think so, but I think it was genuine from Matt Jones, and we've talked to other guys about Carson in the past too. Like, they do see a player who is growing, and I think everyone in here believes one day he will be a really good center. Like, that's sort of been a design for him since he got here. Perhaps it's just happening a little too early, and now you want to make sure you have your bases covered in case you think you're not quite where you need to be for the biggest game of the year.
All right. Anything else that you learned?
I enjoyed talking with Kyle McCord tonight, specifically about the touchdown pass to Cade Stover, the back shoulder ball down the seam there, because I thought this when it happened that they have ran a version of that play a few times and it hasn't quite synced up the right way. And he said the same thing. He said they've had that look, and for whatever reason, they haven't really been able to complete it. But in that moment, he trusted that Cade knew where he was going to throw the ball, which was, again, on his back shoulder away from the defender. And he trusted that Cade was going to be able to kind of contort his body and get there. And he felt that was a sign of growth of not only their relationship, but sort of like an indication that the offense is taking a step forward, with Kyle understanding when and where his receivers want the ball and, the type of throws he needs to make to get it there. So, and I thought that when it happened. So, but I was glad to kind of hear Kyle say that too, because I think it does speak to the confidence that this team needs him to be playing with as it gears up for the Michigan game in 2 weeks.
That sounds like a more loquacious response than the one that Cade gave about that ball.
That's shocking.
Yeah. Which was, he threw me the ball and I caught it.
Sometimes it just needs to be that simple, folks. I respect it.
The quarterback was processing it at a different level, and then the badass tight end was just like, hey, he threw it. I'm on like a banged up leg with a broken wrist. Like, I'm just trying to catch the football. I don't know why you guys are asking me questions. Stop worrying about my injuries. Leave me alone. I don't want to talk about senior night. I'm going to miss Cade Stover so much.
Yeah. His media sessions are highly entertaining.
I mean,
and I don't think he knows that, but they are.
I don't think he does. Because I joke with him before and after about how excited I am to see what he does. And he's just like in a race to get it over with. He's not trying to be entertaining. I think he's kind of hoping that we aren't entertained by it. And if we're gonna have to turn off our recorders if he drops an F-bomb. But guess what? We're not.
No, that's what we're there for.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm really disappointed that he hasn't broken a table yet.
He came pretty close today, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, he was worked up about that.
Yeah.
Don't try and jinx players. Like, why are we talking about no hitters? I don't even think he has a no hitter. He was asked, like, "Hey, you haven't dropped a ball all year." I'm pretty sure that he has, but he was like, "Are you?" I'll paraphrase it in a different way, like JFC, buddy. JFC. Let's not be talking about it anyway.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable. It's fun. Yeah, if he gave more thoughtful, deeper answers, we'd maybe ask him fewer questions.
Yeah, he wouldn't be Cade Stover.
But then he wouldn't be Cade Stover.
He only knows one way to do it. I am amused by what the conversations are like for Keenan Bailey and Jim Knowles and James Laurinaitis when they have to go tell guys like Cade and Tommy that they're not going to play because this is what they love to do. And that would probably be especially difficult for them this week. Cade did work back. He looked fine dealing with the injuries on Saturday. Tommy, we know that he's played through injuries before, and we want to, like, even as badly as they want to be as fully healthy as they can be for the game, like, it's the last time in the horseshoe for these guys. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but it will be. And I can't imagine what it would be like for them to miss it. The last time I can think of a similar situation with personalities and having to sit for injury was like one of the most difficult of all time for John Simon, which is 2 years before you got here.
Mm-hmm.
And he's having like emergency surgery in the locker room to get out there and go play and finish off that undefeated season against Michigan. John Simon's in that same bucket with these guys. It's just relentless workers and no nonsense guys. And like, so I hope that they get that chance on Saturday early, and that what we're talking about with getting guys healthy, that they can come out in the second half and maybe enjoy it.
I actually hadn't considered that angle of it. It makes me now. I think Tommy will probably play, if only for one series, because it is his last game of the shoe. And if he's upright, he'll want to do it. And he appears upright after walking off the practice field tonight. So yeah. I think anyone who is in that position and able will at least get a few snaps.
All right. The only other thing I can throw out there as Michigan's hearing looms on Friday. I understand, maybe there's some more maneuvering going on. All I can tell you is that every single person that I talked to in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center would very much like the suspension to only be 2 games for Michigan's head coach, and that he would be on the sideline a week from Saturday. That is how they feel. Some use more colorful language than others, but Ohio State will not throw a fit if the suspension drops to 2 games for however the machinations work out. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if he'll coach against Maryland, Jim Harbaugh. I don't know, but I think Ohio State would give 2 thumbs up to the idea of Jim Harbaugh being out there and no excuses being available for the Wolverines.
You want both teams home in that game, right? And sometimes you can't control.
So I think there's a push and pull with that, right? Like, he did the crime,
right? And you want to see him do the time, right? And he's probably going to do 2 games, and then we'll see what the NCAA does. But
he did the dub.
He did the. I understand. Like, if I'm on either of these teams, I want the best version of them and the best version of us to put it on the line.
Yeah.
And that involves Jim Harbaugh being there for his team. I totally understand Ohio State fans who think, screw that guy, you should never coach again, too. Like, I get the sentiment. But, like, trying to put myself in the shoes of a player and coach and on in either program, you want that to be legitimate when you get on the field, which is part of the issue with the initial punishment, I guess, because people didn't think it was legitimate, and maybe this year it will be.
Yeah. All right. Well, sorry again for skipping past Minnesota, but I'm not actually sorry about it, because it's a 28-point spread, and Ohio State should handle that comfortably. But it is still one more opportunity, the last one in the horseshoe this year. So we'll have all hands on deck to cover that and get ready for the last 2 weeks of the regular season. And appreciate you joining us on a Wednesday night, a Woody Wednesday on Snap Judgments, brought to you by Buyers Auto. He is Bill Landis, and I am Austin Ward. Thanks again. We'll talk to you later.